Good evening, everybody. And tonight we are going to facilitate a podcast interview with our friend Joe, who's right above me, who represents the Summoning Hour, a podcast that has been fixating heavily on collegiate esports programs and kind of unraveling the wild, wild west of esports, but specifically the collegiate energies. And I'm going to let you, Joe, kind of take over before we do that. The premise of this was Joe actually asked us if we'd like to be on his podcast, and rebutted with, can we stream it to live and absolutely share that VOD afterwards, and for all of us to have in our archives. But from that point, Joe, I'm going to let you take it over from there.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the opportunity to grab you guys all to show up and do this interview. This is really exciting for me, and you have clearly a heads above me in terms of production quality going on. So you got me a little nervous going into my own interview. So So hi, everyone. I am Joe Rakaul Belisek. I am doing this podcast purely because I love esports, and I found that there was a hole missing in coverage for collegiate esports. So I made a podcast about a year ago. I started with interviewing game developers and getting their stories into audible form to find out how people can get into the games industry. And from there, I just kind of took my love for esports and that hole in collegiate esports, and I just wanted to bring it to light and share how everyone is taking their approach to collegiate esports. So I'm here tonight to talk to OU.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate the opportunity, and we wanted to make it a point to bring some pretty heavy representation from those student leadership in our efforts, as we know that you've interviewed other schools, and every single one of us is doing it differently, and we're no exception to that. And this is exactly what you expect from the Division I schools, especially. And we're hoping to fill those shoes properly. So first and foremost, my name is Mike Moog Aguilar. I am the lead advisor of the OU Esports Club now, and this has been a development that I've been working on personally and bringing the students in one by one in leadership roles and throughout the hierarchy over the course of the last 26 months. And within that organization, I'm just going to give some analytics as a snapshot of who we are right now. But we have 6 individual programs. We are now sitting, as of this week, about 525 students in our membership. We're developing across, I believe, around 12 to 13 teams total across 8 different titles. And we have energies represented in journalistic practicum, as well as intercollegiate competition, leadership, community outreach, and so forth. And so I'm going to pass it to my left over here, Brady Bunch style, and go to Matt, and let him introduce himself and what his role is, and a little bit of what his specific program is inside of our organization.
Okay, so hello. My name is Matthew Miller. I am the stream director here at the Esports Club. Basically what I do is I facilitate our stream team, which is a group of students, and we are also to alumni, but group of students who stream weekly on a weekly schedule, and we do variety streamers. So I like to give everybody on my stream team freedom to stream whatever it is they're comfortable with and whatever it is that they enjoy. And so a little bit about me. I'm actually a freshman here. This is my freshman year here. And so I'm very honored to be in the position that I am. And this esports club in general, I think, has been a really great experience for me, because before I entered college, I was always so nervous. And I didn't really have a whole lot of confidence. But coming into this esports organization, Mike and everybody here they welcomed me with open arms, to say the least. And, I started on the stream team myself, and it gave me a lot of confidence and just a lot of people skills. It seems weird to, talking to a computer, essentially. But interacting with the audience and everything, it really helped me, get a lot of experience. And I hope to reflect that. And of course, going into our next programming, I hope to take the stream team beyond where it is now and really develop it further.
I want to preface in Matt's intro with before Matt was in his role and before Matt was even a student here, his predecessor, we had piloted kind of these loose ideas about what we could do with streaming entertainment as a subculture to the gaming and esports industries. And one of the most progressive ideas, which we only did 2 episodes of, was a cooking show bringing video game food to life, what does food from Skyrim taste like? What does food from World of Warcraft taste like? What does anime food taste like? And it had a lot of success. It actually landed us some partnerships with Blue Microphone and Creative Labs at that time, which are no longer partnerships. But for the brief moment there, we did have that opportunity. But that's what he represents, is that everything else that represents the subcultures of streaming and gaming and everything inside of that. So cool. I'm going to save Jack for last. So Bailey.
Hi, I'm Bailey Brown. I'm the news director here at OU Esports Club. My biggest role entails being the editor-in-chief for SoonerEsports.org, our website. I facilitate our writing team and our creative team. We strive to put up 2 to 3 articles a week, depending on the industry and everything that's going on. And then our creative team is currently in the midst of doing a documentary over Esports Club and everything in the industry. I kind of came to Mike before he anticipated having a website. I threw and I was like, we're doing this no matter what you say. And it took us a little bit to get it up, but we're approaching our 1-year mark for Sooner Esports, and I just found that out today. But yeah.
To end your section, what are some of the maybe 2 of your favorite articles that your team has produced since its inception?
Probably any of ours over OP Live. We got the chance to go to OP Live back in September, which was a Overwatch event that our team participated in, and it was crazy getting to be on our feet all day and reporting. I think we pumped out like 3 or 4 articles about it.
Oh yeah.
Which was fantastic for us, and it was great.
I'm going to preface or end that with one more article that really spoke to me. Our current stream or shoutcasting director, who's not part of the stream tonight, wrote an article about gender equality in esports, and it really kind of personified what that effort was about, to really say, here are some of the topics that translate across different industries, and they're just as important in this one too. And that really spoke to me because it wasn't something that we asked him to do. It was something that he was motivated to do himself. So, Josh.
Hi, my name is Josh, and I go by Nihilist on most games. Last name is Ingram. I am the community outreach coordinator for the OU Esports Club. My role is essentially to reach out to other people within the community and to make sure that OU as a whole is reaching out to make sure that young gamers, which is obviously becoming a huge thing for that age demographic, that they have opportunities and that they know that we have a place for them at OU, that we want them there regardless of what their socioeconomic status is. And then also going out into the community and doing direct work. My major is social work, and I'm a senior. Part of the social work program is you go out and do practicum your last 2 semesters, which is basically going out into the field and doing social work. I was assigned to a library in a rough part of Oklahoma City, a lot of challenges in this specific area. I was able to go in and partner with a couple different people to build 6 full gaming machines for the library specifically. So I've been able to engage hundreds and hundreds of kids, in this specific area. And I've gotten feedback from teachers and parents and librarians about just how they've seen a marked transformation in some of the behaviors in these children. And it's great because, we get to reward them with positive feedback as opposed to they get a lot of negative feedback, from their behaviors. So it's been a really rewarding experience.
In that one, on the fact that one of the things that I wanted to do when we first started developing was have a foundation of outreach opportunities that were purely a means to give back, with such a brand new topic and so many people emphasizing ways to get profitable in it versus building substance and infrastructure. We wanted to sustain our communities first. And in Oklahoma, we're not known for a lot of really good things unless we're talking about oil and gas. And our educational system is one of those things that we're known for in the wrong way. And this is one of those opportunities where we infuse a higher education campus and say, these are journalistic practicum opportunities. These are business opportunities. These are social work opportunities, sports medicine opportunities. And now you have another pathway into a career with a pipeline for education to achieve it. And so all these things come together. So last but not least is Jack, who is our president, and pending his voice due to his allergies, Jack, I'll let you explain as much as you can.
Well, it's okay that my voice isn't doing super hot right now because I'd probably say my position, kind of like Mike's, is pretty broad and pretty vague because it's so broad. Because Mike and I do a lot of just whatever needs to get done. Like lately, Mike's been doing a lot of things with the website, which is something that Bailey also works on. Been doing things with apparel, which is something that our fundraising director also has a say in. Lately, I've been doing a ton of things regarding production to help our shoutcasting people learn more about it, and it just really kind of comes down to whatever needs to get done. I assist with in getting it done, because really wouldn't be much without everyone doing their own part, and part of what the president's supposed to do is just help find people who would be good for those parts, because you can't do it by yourself. And so that's something Mike and I have had to do since the beginning of the organization, actually. Yep. Been here, oh my god, I feel kind of old. It's been a long time.
Cool.
But it's been good.
Awesome. So I'm gonna map out our timeline really quick before we dive into specifics. So 26 months of development, and it was November 2016 then when the CIO of the OUIT Central IT department basically came back from a Twitch or an Amazon summit where they did an expo on Twitch, and he basically said, "What the hell is Twitch?" And all of this spawned from that one question. And so from November 2016 through April 2017. All I did was reach out to other schools, some of the schools that you've interviewed. So Boise State, Utah, Maryville, UC Irvine, Robert Morris and Kurt Melcher up there, and some of the godfathers and godmothers of esports and collegiate esports in general, to kind of see just how fragmented it was, what was working, what wasn't, early pressure points. And it led up to just doing a social / League of Legends tournament, where we just said, hey, let's do a Q&A and see what kind of energies we have on campus to get this going. And we had over, I think, 80 students come out for that event. We only opened up 4 slots for teams, which filled up within 24 hours. And that's where I met our vice president, who's now an alum. But he said, hey, let me shoutcast this for you. And I said, okay, I don't know you, guy. Let's try it. And holy crap, did he knock that out of the park. And so we got a lot of administrative feedback on that, and said, holy crap, we had no idea we had these talents here. And it's just because we'd never looked for them. But then we fast forward to the summer of 2017, where Alex, vice president, introduced me to Jack, and we started to lay the foundation of who we wanted to be. And the original energies, you noticed that nothing in this conversation really talked about intercollegiate competition, which is where the majority of other programs start their journey. And we wanted to leave that last because we knew that as an industry overall in esports, that it is the journalistic practicum that honestly drives the industry. If you don't have the marketing in place, you don't have the creative media production in place, you don't have the venue coordination and stuff in place, then esports doesn't really exist. It's the simple principle of everyone knows Michael Jordan, but if he wasn't on the cover of ESPN, would we all really know him? Yeah, he might have still been talented, yes or no, but without the journalistic energies covering him, highlighting him, interviewing him, and talking about him, he would have never been as popular as he was. So we took that approach as a means to say, let's go into focusing on journalistic opportunities, which is what Bailey and Matt represent, as well as the shoutcasting energies, because we know ESPN is employing shoutcasters. We know that Blizzard has their own. Every single esports major tournament has shoutcasters, and the University of Oklahoma actually teaches a sportscasting degree. So it's a direct connection when we get to that point to have a transition into evolution of academic curriculum on campus when that time comes. And then we branched out into obviously community. How can we engage the student population? How can we keep them entertained? Because the word esports is off-putting for a lot of people that are more introverted and less socially inclined. And so we wanted to make a community that is definitely focused more on fellowship. And we haven't mastered this yet by far, but we set out to achieve this monstrous goal of how do we put all gamers under a single umbrella. That means console versus PC. That means card versus FPS, MOBA versus Battle Royale, or anything like that. How do we do this? And so we started to work on workflows. And again, not perfected, but we are starting to see the fruits of that come together as it's become easier for Jack and I to kind of delegate out to these different teams. Then we start talking about intercollegiate competition. And so intercollegiate competition for all schools comes down to several organizations. NACE, TESPA, CSL, AVGL, and then a couple little smaller startups. And all of us participate in these things, as well as further coordination that's happening in each of our regions for tournaments. The OP Live event, which was a Overwatch event sponsored by the Dallas Fuel in northern Texas, represented 16 teams across the region, with teams coming as far as I think Colorado State was there. We had teams from Mississippi and all the way down from Texas Tech, as well as all the northern Texas teams like UNT, UT Dallas, UT Austin, Texas Wesleyan, and ended up placing second there, which was a great opportunity for our Overwatch team and for us to see it. But we knew intercollegiate competition was going to happen no matter what. We're the University of Oklahoma. We're well known for competition in that regard. So we wanted to fixate on everything else aside from that, knowing that would be the easiest energy to find students for. So hit me, Joe. Where are we at now?
Well, you've knocked out normally what takes me about a half hour to get through, so that's awesome. So we're ahead of schedule, so we can maybe dive into each person a little bit more. But I am curious because I have been to the OU campus. I used to live there in the early 90s. So I know the Sooner culture around football.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember that well. I mean, I was a squirt back then, but I still remember that. What's the reception been like on campus from the rest of the student body? Like, how is the athletics department accepting this? And like, where is it coming from in terms of acceptance? Like, do other students recognize what your guys' accomplishments are, or do they recognize the Overwatch jerseys going around on campus?
Well, I'll approach this from two different angles: the administrative side, faculty staff, versus the student cultures. So, administrative side, we have been in a state of flux at OU with the presidential shift after President Bourne for 22 years. And that anytime you have a changing of the guard at that high of a caliber after that duration is going to be all kinds of cultural shifting. You know, a lot of people leaving the ship on their own accord, a lot of people being forced out, reorganization, to put it lightly, consolidation of efforts. And financially, OU, we've seen some benefits of these things, but we've also culturally are currently trying to find ourselves again. And so I knew that coming into this, having worked at Apple before, having worked or been in the military and seen when new leadership comes in, that it's going to be rocky for probably 12 to 24 months after that transition, just as they're establishing that new hierarchy of leadership. So we looked at every single gray area that existed and lived in those spaces. So while most people or most other schools that we've researched have gone into one of two different categories, they've either gone interest-based student org, which is where almost all of us start, most common student org on any campus, and then the goal is either sports club or some kind of departmental infrastructure. So University of Utah, for instance, AJ Dimmick is considered more of a departmental org infrastructure under their engineering department. Whereas UCLA, the only Division I, I believe, that currently has it under their athletics. We actually partnered with Student Life and said, hey, we are not sports club. We're also in Oklahoma, so we know that this is a fight that's not going to win at this time. Too much change is happening, too much controversy with the word varsity, that we don't even want to approach it. Can we find a new classification that deals with the competitive energies? Because there's not just us, there's other organizations that compete, which aren't defined by traditional sports definitions. And for the University of Oklahoma, our fitness and rec department defines sports as non-sedentary based activity. So with that in mind, that completely negates us from the sports club conversation. So what did happen this year is we created a new organization classification called competitive, which has all the same benefits of the sports club designation, but doesn't fall under fitness and rec for governance. So we are kind of floating as our own entity, which allows us to enjoy the playground that is a higher education landscape, to really flex it. And that's where the OU interlock came into play, because we gained that with it, which is huge. We have the OU we're a licensed organization, which is insane. Some of the other organizations, to put that into perspective of what that looks like, is clubs that are based around like chess or motorsports, which are not traditionally classified as conventional sports in a collegiate landscape. The athletics department is actually considered a peer of ours already, as we've been asked to do programming inside of our own basketball stadium, which is huge because that's a big stadium, and are actively seeking out opportunities for us to partner, do fundraising. Licensing actually had come to us, which is not what we've experienced looking at other schools on gaining further formalization. Moving to the other spectrum, the other side of the grass, where the students reside. That has been probably the harder challenge, and part of it is because, again, we're talking to a culture that tends to be more introverted, tends to be more wallflower, tends to be stick on their own path and not go out of it. Gaming is kind of their sanctuary, and they don't necessarily actively seek out social ties with it. If it falls in their lap, they're all about it, but you still have to make it fall in their lap. And this is the part where I don't think anybody is truly excelling at, and if they are, it's very few. But we have some work to do there for sure in ramping up our opportunities to engage students on campus, and really make them feel comfortable. We knew, and I knew specifically, that when we used the word esports, that it was such a turnoff that, gaming, esports, two different things. But we used esports because of the buzzword of our peers in the industry. And so now we're having to reverse engineer a little bit and explain to the community that there are gaming energies in here, and we're interested in casual just as much as competition, and we're interested in providing other opportunities aside from just competing in scholarships and gaining scholarships through that opportunity. We're interested in offering scholarships for the writers, the streamers, the shoutcasters, the community leaders, and everything underneath that to help bolster an entirely comprehensive program. And I think out of everybody in here, I would like to hear probably from, I'd actually like to hear from Bailey and Jack on this one in regards to the student culture impact on this and the reception for us. So Bailey first, I guess.
I don't know if I'm the right person to talk about that, being in my little introverted social circle.
Well, this is the reason I'm asking you this is because what you just said. So from your perspective, you're the exact student demographic that I'm referencing, whereas Jack is very much a talker and very outgoing person. It's a complete different dynamic. So for you, being that representation of the student population, how do you view the organization despite your role as in the news control?
It's definitely been an opportunity for me to meet people who are exactly like me. Which is probably the best thing that I've gotten out of it, taking away anything that I've done with the news. The group of people the 500 of us that I've met who, walking onto this campus, I joined a sorority to find friends, and I found out that was the wrong way to go about things. So then I spent a year just huddled in my dorm room, not talking to anyone. And then Mike and his org came along and was like, hey, you can still have friends and do what you like behind a computer, and it's been great since then.
Awesome. And then Jack on the extroverted perspective.
I don't know. I mean, it's always a challenge to get some of the more introverted people to kind of come out of their shell a little bit. I find that, in my experience, most of the time, pretty much everybody, once they do come out of their shell a little bit, whether it be, like in person or over Discord, they tend to enjoy it and tend to try to come back to it and, replicate that. But the hardest part's always getting someone to take the first step, I think, or maybe the first few steps. Maybe they do it once and they enjoy it, but they're still a little shy or something. But I don't know. I think it's just the biggest challenge, I guess, even when you are someone extroverted, is just to try and get someone to reach back out. You can reach out as much as you want, but you have to show them it's not all that, scary to come participate in in-houses, even if you don't know anybody. And, that's why it's nice to have this organization, because the people that are that are extroverted gamers can be put into a place with all of the introverted gamers, and hopefully through like the combined efforts, you can show a lot of activity and sort of naturally encourage people to participate just from being active regularly.
Right. And then I'm going to reference something that Matt said earlier as he took on this role. To have a freshman come in and then take charge on the leadership of an organization with these kinds of goals speaks to the caliber that we were able to extract out of Matt. But you had no idea that this is what you were going to do when you came to OU. And you can see he hasn't stopped grinning since we started this stream. He absolutely adores his opportunities, and that's what we want to create. Now, one of the challenges with that in mind is that we do have a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of opportunities for students to do more than just being a part of a community that plays games. And that message is where the biggest struggle for us lies, in how do we convey that where it translates, because as we approach streaming, we're used to seeing the organic growth of what we've seen with people like Ninja, with people like other streamers, Shroud and so forth, where they're good at a game and they have good personable skills. But again, at the core, the techniques that's being taught there and the marketing and the self-branding are all opportunities that higher education can teach, or at least set the foundation and help cultivate. And having to educate people that streaming is actually journalistic practicum is one of those challenges, and it absolutely is. I mean, television and broadcast is this. This is the dawn of television right now. What we're doing as we speak is live television again, which is really ironic because you used to have families come around the TV at 7 o'clock on Wednesdays for some show, and then we went a la carte with Netflix and Hulu and everything else, and now we're seeing that trend right back into Twitch, where people are coming on at 8 o'clock because they want to see their favorite streamer stream and be a part of that community. And so that's all part of the growing pains with this topic in this space for us, that we acknowledge and that we're trying to actively find ways to fix.
One thing I have to note is, like, throughout all of the collegiate groups I've interviewed, is the astounding nature at which these students have stepped up to leadership roles where they're not trained in management, they're not trained in business practices or branding, or maybe that's related to their major, but that's not what they're practicing on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
But this is culturally what's going on. You have a whole bunch of millennials going out and doing that side hustle. That's what this is. But all of this is now underneath the label of a university, which has so much more credibility than a Twitch stream that's just starting out.
Right.
So now you have the building up of a brand that's now building, or you have a brand that's now building production houses.
Right.
Those production houses are now legitimizing the work that the students are doing, because these are actual practices that people are doing. Like Matthew, you're going to be able to go to any number of places if you keep this role for your whole tenure at university. You're going to be able to say, put that on a resume and go over to Splice and C9 or whoever and be able to say, I at least qualify for what you're wanting in an applicant.
Joe, pause for a second. Matt, what's your major?
So my major is actually meteorology.
Yeah. All right, Joe, continue.
Well, then maybe not so much, but maybe cloud. Yeah, so Cloud9, it still works.
Well, and that's the beauty of what Gaming Energies that I feel represents, is that while Bailey, Jack, and Josh do represent their actual career paths and their academic paths, Matt signifies what I see more times than not, where you just have a passion for something and this becomes your side gig, or it ends up being your primary. We have an alum who is the head writer for Team Liquid. She graduated from OU with a degree in nursing, and she lives in Norman still, and she stopped doing anything with nursing, and all she does is is write for Team Liquid, and that's here in Oklahoma as an alum. And so it is amazing where it can take you if you just keep your mind open.
Yeah, I want to go back to something else that you said earlier, like when you were searching for people to join your club and find out like what talent you actually had. It's like you kind of have to take a moment and be like, yeah, you're surprised by it, but at the same time you have to take a step back and look at all the varying interests that the school represents through its majors, through all of its certificate programs and everything. You've got everything covered at a university. So it's like, yeah, there's going to be those people who stand out. There's going to be those leaders who can step up, but they're going to come from anywhere. And that's one of the things that I'm really prizing about the people I'm meeting, is that they have such a unique take on what they bring, but then it's also what they want to be doing, whether it's on the side or if it's just, it rolls right into why they're at university in the first place.
Right.
Now, I want to touch on the fact that you guys do have community outreach and journalism and your stream team, and then like you have so much external awareness of everything around you and trying to influence the culture of esports, and not just at a collegiate level, but you're also introducing the idea of esports, and those things are going to be reaching out to ideas that people have probably heard of, Ninja and Fortnite and Shroud, or all the Apex Legends stuff going on. Like it's bound to hit news channels somewhere. I mean, Ninja's everywhere on every major holiday lately, and NFL has been covering it. So your average 50-year-old who's the standard fan of the NFL, now they know who Ninja is. Now they know what Fortnite is because there's these NFL ads that say now with Fortnite. It's having that level of exposure. What's been some of the challenges that you've had in your communities about educating esports?
Does anyone else want to take this one first? Don't be shy. I think the biggest one is reverse engineering what everybody has seen as the final product. One of the ways that I inspire incoming freshmen or high schoolers that learn about our existence and are interested at OU, and this has definitely been more of a recent this year type of development, is I'll take a montage video from any esports event, and then I'll take a montage video from any conventional, I call it analog sports, not to be disrespectful, but analog sports, and I'll pause it every 15 to 30 seconds, and I'll list all the jobs that we just saw, from the marketing to the camera operations to the venue operations to the coaching, the analysts, the sports medicine, the player themselves, the jerseys, the merchandising, and putting that in the perspective of these are the degree paths and these are the opportunities of how you can be that entity influencing what we're seeing. That holds a lot more weight in inspiring youth and even the adults of those youth who are definitely ill-equipped in regards to guiding their kids on how do they become what they're passionate about if they're into these things. But they absolutely translate, and that's the thing, is that it's not this completely innovative thought process. It's just a matter of someone needed to dissect it a little bit. You have to think about having a physical jersey versus a DLC jersey or a DLC uniform. That's still branding if it has a logo on it. It's still merchandising. It's still finance. It's still licensing protocol and compliance. All of that stuff is there, legal, all of it. And it's just the 2019 version of those degrees 20 years ago. And that's really where the hardest challenge comes from, is just spreading that message that says break down what you're actually seeing instead of just being a consumer. Actually be someone, that can critically think about how we got to this point. And that has worked tenfold for a couple of the high schoolers that have come here now. Not that we've had that many, but I'm going to reference one specific now junior, who at the time that I met him was a sophomore, and his mother, who works in the honors college where I work on campus, basically said, I heard that you're developing gaming, and I have a son who doesn't do anything but play games. He's a D student right now. And what are you doing? Is there anything that you can do to inspire him on a path? He has no idea what he wants to do with his life. Not that anybody did at that age, but you still have passions aside from playing a game. And playing a game is just a crux to, I don't know how to define it further than that. And after having a conversation with him and showing him kind of ideas of where we wanted to go, I said, what do you really enjoy doing? And he, like a lot of us, enjoy watching live streams or enjoy watching highlight reels on YouTube. And I took a really cheesy early YouTube anime montage done to Evanescence, like everything was at the time, or Linkin Park. And I played it, and then I played a highlight reel at the end of Sports Center, and I asked him what the difference was. There isn't one. It's creative media production for both venues. The difference is ESPN endorses this one, the other one does purely passion. He is now doing tech school during his last 2 years in high school, going into creative media production. He now has a path, and this is exactly what he wants to do. And it's just that little bit of explanation of deconstructing and reverse engineering what we see at the end result that helps people really understand what the opportunities are with this topic, as well as how we can actually approach it and how it becomes tangible and touchable. I mean, esports, we see the things that are mainstream. We talk about Worlds with Riot, or Overwatch League, and the production value in there, Evo with the FGC community. All of them are heavy journalistic practicums, and a lot of those guys had to develop it themselves. They didn't have the curriculum paths. But the purpose of higher education for me specifically is to help stabilize industries and create the professionals to feed that industry, to sustain it. So development and infrastructure infrastructure sustainment is the purpose for me in higher education. So with this now student who knows how to do creative media production, well, ESPN does infographics every 3 milliseconds. That's all creative media production, and that's how it translates. So I'm pretty sure ESPN's not dropping out of esports anytime soon. They're only increasing it. The same with almost any other channel, TBS with E-League, and again, referencing those tournaments, they're going to need production people. They're going to need every single profession that we would see in conventional sports.
Yeah. One other pairing that I always thought was amusing was the Disney XD channel hosting the Overwatch League. Like, I mean, yeah, Disney and ESPN, it makes sense, but like, it's Disney XD playing Overwatch, and it's one, amusing to me, but it also flies in the face of a lot of challenges that I've heard from some other colleges where the games are too violent. And I mean, the NCAA even came out and said that the games are too violent. Like, they have violent video games. We want nothing to do with that. But the fact that, like, Overwatch, yeah, there's still guns, there's still animated violence on there, but Disney, recognizing the cultural relevance of esports as well as the opportunity that they have to put it on air, that's a big deal to notice the shift in culture changes. So I am curious how you guys navigated that water of, like, bringing out League of Legends and Overwatch. And it sounds like you're even aware of the FGC. Like, this is a fighting game, and some of those can be a little more gratuitous than others, Mortal Kombat especially. Right. So I'm wondering what that was like in terms of having to persuade, if you even had to, persuade people to take into account these games that are more violent than traditional sports.
This is going to be when I bring Josh in for a second, but before I let him speak, we didn't have to ask for permission. It was more of a logical conversation about what we wanted to do. And again, finding those areas that were the path of least resistance first, coupled with the energy that we had on campus already. Being at a state where we're not actively recruiting or offering scholarships at OU at this time, we had to play with what we had within the walls of OU. Now, that being said, we just now announced today that we are entering into CSGO and Rainbow Six Siege, which are very traditionally violent games that correlate to the physics of the real world. And one of the things that I preference those leaders that are taking the charge of that is to understand that the premise for these games isn't because the violence is what draws us. These games have a lot of history, especially CSGO. I mean, CS 1.6 and original Counter-Strike and Half-Life 2 back in the day, it has a long history. But if you actually ask students why they play those games, never does the topic of violence come up. Not once. They talk about the strategy. They talk about the way that they overcame the other team. They talk about the dynamics of their teammates. Not once do they reference any kind of anger, any kind of hostility, or any kind of violence in those things. And I want to bring Josh into this topic mainly because Josh is a huge Overwatch fan and player himself. And the other thing that Josh represents that's unique to everyone else in this group, excluding maybe you, Joe, but Josh also has children. And so to play games of that kind of caliber and being in charge and leading this type of effort, his perspectives on things like this will be different than ours. So Josh, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Sure. I think it's important to note, I know it's a little bit off topic, but the way that we handled our release and like promotion of the first couple of games that we decided to launch competitively was very much driven by students that stood up and said that that's what they were interested in. So I think that's something that's really unique to what we're doing at OU. A lot of other colleges that we've seen, they just have a select few titles that they put on blast and they want to really work with. We have this very much like community driven idea that if anyone is a champion for a specific game, like they can bring that forward and be the SME for that specific game. As far as the violence in video games, I think that there's a lot of empirical evidence that is not nearly as convincing as a lot of people think. I've been really deep into the books about this because, like Mike said, I have children, and my oldest child is actually 11, so he's very much entering that stage where he wants to do everything like me. So I really was at a crossroads about 3 or 4 years ago to make the decision on whether or not I could continue, playing video games with him and around him. And I really did a deep dive into the empirical data to make sure that, what we were doing wasn't going to be damaging to him and my other kids. And what I've actually found is that there's some new studies coming out that say that even playing violent video games doesn't really have that much an effect on people. So it's good that the science is finally kind of catching up to what those of us in the field have been kind of thinking for quite a while. Also, it's really important to note that I've been using, I know it's anecdotally, obviously, but in my specific practice at the library, like the behavior modification that we've been using, Fortnite is the game that kids like 8 to 13, 14, they just go nuts for it right now. So the whole goal with that program was to build enough computers where they could play in squads, and they love it, even if they don't do well, which is great. And but it does present some challenges sometimes. So I won't lie. There are some times the kids get upset, but again, it's a perfect opportunity to go into those situations and to do small behavior management and to, let kids get those feelings out and talk about like exactly what's happening and why they're upset and identifying those feelings. And these are skills like that a lot of kids these days don't have. So it's positive to be able to get them into that mindset and have them like move forward with those ideas. And it's just, it's another form of validation, like seeing somebody like me, like early 30s, very, very much older than them, like being into the same things and being able to speak their language and talk to them. And then even at the collegiate level, I mean, we have kind of made this culture at OU where we're very much, our motto is to debate, not degrade. And I think that I spent last spring on the TESPA Overwatch team. And I can't recall a single time that anything ever got toxic. It was all just, it was all about the teamwork and helping each other out and making suggestions and having a good time. So I think that a lot of those challenges as far as like optics are concerned are pretty much behind us. And we're really just moving forward and hoping for just more of those empirical studies to come out to make sure that, we're doing the right things. And that, I think the sports medicine for esports is going to become a really big thing in the next few years. So we need to keep an eye on that because burnout is so bad still right now. So that's something that's a real big challenge for me. And when I initially came into the organization, that was one thing that I told Mike I was very concerned about, the emotional well-being of our leadership, of our players, of our staff. And so moving forward, I think you're going to see a lot more research in those specific areas.
Cough, cough. Any faculty that end up watching this video, research practicum opportunities. All right.
There you go. So now that you've gone down that road, I'm curious, what is the club doing to kind of ensure that the students are taking care of themselves? Because classic streamer attitude or esports player attitude is you're going to practice with your squad 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day, and then you're going to go back to your room and grind out solo queue for another 10 hours and sleep maybe 4, and then class in between all of that.
Right.
So, or like even GPA requirements for participation. Like I know some universities have gotten that because they're instilled in the athletics department, so they hold their students that way. Some clubs actually enforce the GPA, even though it's not a requirement from the school. They just want to make sure everyone remembers their whole purpose there is education.
Right. This one I'm going to bring Jack in after I speak a little bit. We do enforce a 2.5 GPA minimum requirement for all of our competitive efforts. We also limit our sanctioned team interactions to 15 hours a week maximum. And on top of that, part of that 15-hour chunk is dedicated to wellness-based activities. So to help them do team synergy and also find balance physically outside of the context of skill set in game. Now we do have perfect examples of failure, and we have perfect examples of balance. There's definitely not a perfect system for this quite yet here at OU. I definitely have students that play way too much, and I do have students that do find a good balance and have a healthy academic lifestyle with it. But I want to tap on Jack's shoulder a little bit because Jack has a little bit of background also managing a regional tournament in League of Legends now for over 2 years, and has dealt with team energies and toxicity all over the place, as well as being involved with us and setting the standards for how we at least wanted to start our intercollegiate competition development. So, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to toxicity, most of the toxicity on the internet stems a lot of it. I guess it's unfair to say most. Haven't done the research myself, but in my experience, most of it has definitely come about because of anonymity. And a big part of what we've done with a tournament I help organize outside of the walls of OU is really try to instill a sense of community, putting on weekly streams and podcasts and getting people talking, getting them interacting in Discord and make sure they're all in Discord server. And over the last almost 3 years that we've done that, it's really helped turn around. Previously, it was just a Facebook group with like a couple thousand people in it, no tournament or anything, and there was always drama, always toxicity. And just by bringing people together more and having people interact on not just this anonymous social media, very shallow level, it really reduced a lot of toxicity. And any people who couldn't grow and out of those habits just sort of naturally got pushed out of the community because people wouldn't want to play with them. And that's some people, they started to realize the error of their ways, but until there were teams or people saying like that's not cool to act like that, on not just one person but lots of people saying that, and they could start to see that they were not getting to participate because of the way that they were acting, it really started to make a difference. And so lots of people started to just treat each other like humans, really. And so I think that's one of the bigger problems with that toxicity that comes about in all these kinds of games is it's just anonymity. You don't feel any sort like they're a real person on the other side of the screen, and you just start to say things that you wouldn't say to somebody right in front of you.
I think one of the biggest advantages and disadvantages that we have right now is because we are not in the winning is the metric that matters right now. Right now, the only metric that I've set for my teams is that they will win and lose as a team. And to set that precedence also means that the pressure of success is defined by only that. Yes, they want to win naturally, but if they lose, then they can recover and work together to become stronger as a team, which is core fundamental team development in general. And the day will come for every single one of us as we get more scholarships, as we get more endorsement, as we get more governance, where winning will become that metric. OU football. I mean, when we lose, it's crazy on campus. I mean, the energy is palpable. I mean, you can taste it in the air when we lose, especially if it's like Red River Rivalry or Bedlam or those classic rivalries that we have. And so right now, we're enjoying the fact that pressure is not on us yet, but the day will come. I'm going to reference one specific example at OP Live when our Overwatch team made it all the way to the final match, and UNT started to really understand our style of gameplay at the time. And out of a best of 5, we dominated in the first one. It started to balance in the second, and then it was dead even in the third, starting to go to UNT, and then it was straight UNT from that point forward. Immediately after UNT had won that match, not only did our team stand up and applaud UNT, but they immediately went back into deep diving about what went wrong without being toxic. They went right into analysis. They went right into figuring out how to make themselves better. And for me, it was a teardrop moment because, one, it was a beautiful stage, and it was just amazing to get that far along with a team that was only 28 days old, legitimately. But to see that kind of response, one, sportsmanship, but two, the team wanting to improve as a team, was just that's the dream as a little league coach when you see your little soccer team understand the fundamentals of sportsmanship, which is something that absolutely needs to be improved upon in esports.
I'm glad you mentioned that because as we're talking and I'm putting some other things together just based off of how you all are talking about mental capacity and like training and making sure we're not burning people out, is that and mentioning Pee Wee is like, for a lot of people, this is their first opportunity to be competitive because sports wasn't something that they did as a kid. And so they're getting a lot of the lessons that those who played sports growing up, and like the lessons in learning, the lessons of how to do better, how not to like just turn it all into a big ball of anger and take it out on everyone afterwards.
Absolutely.
Like we're now in such new territory where people are learning these things for the first time. So it's an interesting point to hear collegiate students going through this and then being able to see like that same Pee Wee soccer team growing up and being on a stage kind of. And so now we're transitioning all sorts of just social, economic, and just straight up feeling about how people are understanding esports.
Right.
And like the fact that professional esports is considered professional. No one thinks back that 10 years ago, 18 years ago, all of this was done on fold out chairs and tables, a basement and a back room. And like, look at League of Legends World Championship in 2011. Yeah. It was in the back corner of the bottom floor and with little lights going on, and everyone had CRT monitors like stacked next to each other. Not a single brand sponsoring all of that. Like it was like everyone brought out their own setups. Like,
right.
And so thinking about these students who are learning the stuff for the first time, I could absolutely see that being a tearjerker moment.
Oh, sure. I had to excuse myself from the public eye for a good minute. It was a proud moment for sure.
And with moments like that, in terms of capturing that journalistically, how are we thinking that you guys are going to go forward with making sure that you're covering each step along the way getting there? Because like tournaments, they're usually 2-3 days long.
Right.
And so you have a very rapid turnaround. And if you're not the ones doing the official stream, how do you keep yourselves involved as like a stream director or as a journalist when everything's so rapid fire that you just don't want to overwhelm everyone?
There's a couple of specific efforts. One is OUXP, and I'm going to let Bailey talk about that in a minute. But the other is, again, this is one of those things that we will vet out as a media outlet. And we've already flexed our strength as a media outlet to get press passes. So like when the Esports Arlington Arena opened up, we had press passes for it and gained free access to it. The same for OP Live. We took 5 journalists with us and got press passes. So understanding the responsibility of having that press pass to help promote the event as well as document our journey is also a moment of pride for the students that are involved in that specific development on top of the students on stage. And to have your name on that article that represents the university, at the time it wasn't a university licensed program, but still just as important because it was part of the stuff that helped us get it. So Bailey, I want to transition to you and talk about what OUXP is and what the goal is of that specific project.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, we do have OUXP going on. We have a group of about 4 or 5 students who took on this on their own initiative. This is nothing that me or Mike came up with, but they are doing interviews with everyone, all the leadership, a bunch of the teams. They went with us to OP Live to get footage, and their goal is to kind of shine the light on the part of esports that's not seen. So they're going beyond the 6th chair in front of a huge crowd. You know, they're going to the behind the scenes of the coaches and the journalists just like us, and everything like
that. That specific, there is a teaser on studentesports.org already. It's about a 1.5-minute teaser, and it's going to be released as a full-length documentary at the end of the semester. At least that's the goal. And it was also another moment of pride because it's just another team that's finding purpose and finding an absolute need and vacancy that's not being answered yet. But what that signified for me specifically is an organic grassroots effort to tell people why they're passionate about this. And it's from passion that drove them to do this on their own. We're not compensating them. None of us are compensated, including me as the advisor. We haven't taken a dime yet, or we haven't taken much money from OU at all. And so it just continues that mission of look at how much we can do before we start saying, let's make money on this topic, which is one of those things that, again, I find that other colleges are so focused on. How do I make this profitable? How do I make this such a big deal? How do I turn this into tangible revenue when the industry is too young for that? It just genuinely is. And without any major governing boards across everything, truly, we're not there yet. But this is how we get there. because we're telling the stories, and now it's like, oh my goodness, yes, we have to have journalistic energies at all of our campuses. Holy crap, I didn't realize how involved that was. The same with business, and OU has a sports team management degree, for instance. I mean, that should be direct correlation. What Josh is doing with social work is insane. It makes perfect sense of how we can give back to our own backyards and inspire a recruitment pipeline to take care of our state as well as our neighboring states and the entire, it can be a global development. And so the journalistic practicums and opportunities that Bailey represents specifically in her team will help us paint that picture to make that message easier to convey, versus us having a 3-hour, 4-hour mic special on what we're doing. It's now translatable into media and graphics and documents and articles and a pulse of a community of how we think. I want to transition to Matt on the same topic, where he represents the more fun-loving energies of what we represent, and some of the fun that he's enjoyed. I would love for you to talk about some of the things you did last semester when Jasmine was still at the helm of the development for that, and some of the things that you kind of did off the wall and some of the reactions you got.
So, when I was first transitioning to streaming, every good TV show, essentially, since it's what streaming is, more or less, every good TV show has something that it's known for. Something that, when you watch a series, you expect something. It's sort of a hook. And so, my hook was, while I was still trying to come out of my shell and become this social creature that I am now, was singing. I've always wanted to do singing. I've been involved in the bands for about 8.5 years now. But singing was always an avenue that I was too nervous to go down. So I figured if I put myself on the spot, I have no choice but to do it. And so going with that, I would set up bit incentives. For anybody who's not familiar with bits on Twitch, bits are essentially Twitch's currency for donations. 1 bit is essentially 1 cent. And so I would set up bit incentives where if I met a certain amount of bits per stream, I believe I set it at 500 at first, I would sing a song, and you could request it, and I would sing a song. And I think the best stream that I'm sure, and Mike was there for that one, it was a whole sort of like Queen medley. And one of the unique talents I have is that I can sing a lot higher than any male should be able to. And, it was a really fun stream, and I did Bohemian Rhapsody, of course, and everybody enjoyed that. It's not every day that you get to see someone singing a high, super high, where it unfocuses the camera. And it's really fun, and I enjoy doing that. And, I think streaming in general, it's, Mike was saying this too, it is a TV show. It's being on TV. It's on a schedule at certain times on days that you expect, and you know what you're going to get. And that's how I formulated my schedule that I made for the stream team. You have this person here, and we all we do our own things. I know I have a person who plays Apex Legends. He's pretty good at it. I've got a guy who does the trading card Magic the Gathering on there. I've got someone who does fighting games. We are variety streamers, but we cover a lot of different genres. And there are people who come in. For example, there are people on my stream who come in just to hear me sing at the end of my streams. Right. Or there are people who come in just to see the fighting games. And so I think, what do I want to take this? Essentially, I think it's really important that we keep this streaming aspect. And like you mentioned earlier, people with these skills that they develop here can go on and take that to the bigger teams, whether that be from David's shoutcasting stuff or from my streaming division, like personalities, gaming personalities.
Right.
Influencers are very quickly becoming a reasonable profession to take. Absolutely. So, these are skills, and being able to promote your own brand and take care of that and represent yourself well, those are all just really good skills. And just so you're not alone, I am not a singer by any means. It took me until this last December to finally do karaoke, so you're years ahead of me. So I will tune in for your end of stream singing from now on.
If you don't mind me saying something about Twitch, I'm an advertising major, and I spent my entire last spring semester researching the advertising benefits for gaming in general. And I feel like a lot of companies don't realize this market at all. Even when I was just doing my presentation and presenting my professor the numbers with just Twitch alone, I didn't even touch any of the televised competitive games on TV. He was blown away, and he ended up going back to his agency in California and started on those efforts with advertising. So I think it's a huge untapped market, and it's going up.
And you only have to go far as Apex Legends to see that. I mean, it launched on the Super Bowl with no fanfare, no warning that this thing was coming, and it was on Twitch, and you had a few players or a few influencers playing it, and it took off. And now you look at like the Esports Observer's charts for numbers of hours streamed in the last week. Fortnite is now like 4th or 5th on the list, and Apex Legends is at the top. This is just with Twitch. This is just with word of mouth through a digital age now. That's insane.
I want to end that specific segment with one story because, again, this whole effort started with what the hell is Twitch as the question. And during that research, I referenced one specific event in my research that really defined Twitch for me. And I am a photographer of 18 years. I've shot anything from weddings to newborns to last rites to funerals to anything, cosplay included. And I followed this cosplay photographer based out in Cali who made a living off of cosplay photography, which is insane to me because there's no way in heck that you can do that in Oklahoma. But she was telling me what her current project was. I shared about what I was doing, and I didn't come back to that stream for 4 weeks. And when I came back to that stream, she remembered my name. She remembered what I was working on. Her community remembered who I was and what I was working on. And in that moment, it completely clicked for the last pieces that I couldn't answer. Being 36 myself and a little bit past this, the Twitch generation, as I'll call it, still there, but not as well versed. And it made me think about what if you could actually talk to John Wayne on a movie set in real time. That's what this represents, you know. And that's one of those things, again, how do we reverse engineer to explain this to the people that are like, why do people want to spend time watching other people play? Or why do we want to spend time watching other people that might have some kind of, you know, why do we invest so much in that? And that in itself explained it. It's modern day Cheers, where everybody knows your name if you spend the time investment to grow with that community around that streamer, or stream yourself and grow your own. And that's exponentially powerful in a day and age where we do tend to have more passive aggressive communications through digital means now with social media and texting, and versus face-to-face interactions more times than not. And that in itself signifies the true power and importance of what Twitch represents and live streaming services in general. And that is the core fundamental of what we launched Matt's Energy with, is why do we want to do streaming entertainment? And this is because this is where the bulk of gamers will go. This is where they'll end up, because they will find their home. They will find someone to relate to without having to just be in those more anxious scenarios or more controversial or confrontational scenarios.
And actually, if you let me add something real quick here, it's not about numbers. Numbers is a big part of the industry. You know, everybody looks at numbers. Advertisers, big business, they all look at numbers. But it's a sense of community that I think is the most important, and that I strive to not germinate. Oh boy, what's the word?
Just grow.
Yeah.
Perpetuate?
Yeah, that's the word. Okay. But even if you only have 4 consistent people that watch your stream every week, that's 4 people you can always expect to be there.
Right.
And you can have more of a personal communication with them, even though you might not even know them. And so I think having that sense of community is a really strong point that maybe could be focused on a little bit more from some other people. And I think I'm really proud of what we have here.
Right. Cool.
All right. I think we're coming up on that hour mark, and I don't want to keep y'all up too much later. So maybe I'm curious, how are you all feeling about kind of leading the way? I mean, esports collegiately started really just a few years ago, and everyone's starting now, but you guys have a good sense of identity, what your program's about, where it's going to be going, and how you all are invested in it. How does it make you feel knowing that this is kind of the foundation of collegiate esports and you're having some amount of effect on it, at least locally or at OU, but then also for those of us like me paying attention to the scene, knowing that this is the start, this is all kindling 2 years ago, and now things are starting going, and you guys are helping to define collegiate esports. What's that resonate with you?
Jack,
guys?
I want you on that one.
I've never really thought about it before. I keep pretty darn busy in all aspects of my life. But I don't know. It feels pretty cool. I've had it happen twice now where I've gotten to talk to parents with young kids at little events going on outside of things or at the mall. And it's probably my favorite thing is when they are intrigued in it because they're like, well, my kid likes video games. Maybe there's something here, and that really resonates with me personally because I spent all my life through high school being told by my parents and society in general, just was kind of a closet gamer, didn't tell my high school friends or my high school girlfriend or pretty much anybody that I played a lot of video games. Like, what you doing? I'm like, Netflix. Really, you're just like playing World of Warcraft or League of Legends or StarCraft. And I just kind of always kept that really like in the dark. And it was stressful because I kind of felt like I was living a double life almost. Not that it was any sort of like real extreme, like it's still just video games. But I don't know. It always just stressed me out that I felt like I wasn't supposed to be playing video games because that's what my parents were always telling me. So I just work really hard to try and keep pushing esports forward on all fronts to try and make it something mainstream and the norm that people who want to pursue it can, with the support of family. And my family's been supportive, now because I've been able to show them the differences. But it was a struggle, getting to that point. So I want to make it easier for future peoples.
I'm going to add in that this is the University of Oklahoma, and it's got its own traditions and heritage and lineage, just like any other university. And we're at the day and age when the NBA didn't exist yet, or the NCAA didn't exist yet. And that's what we're all creating. We're creating our own ESPN. We're creating our own leagues. We're creating our own infrastructure of a program that has never had governance or existence prior to it. And it is a big moment of pride for anyone involved in it. And it should be. And that's part of it as we're trying to spread that the responsibilities of leadership across the board more. When we first started, it was a team of 8 or 8 students and then 4 advisors. And out of those 8 students, we really only had opportunities for them to be engaged with maybe 4 of them. And now we're up to 11 leadership in the highest tier, and all of them have functionality now. And so for me as that mentor, that advisor, that kind of director of operations and that mindset, I wanted to create peers. I wanted them to graduate as peers, no longer being mentored, but standing next to me. And as we all go into an industry that has never been defined yet, these roles don't exist entirely yet. They're being defined. And anybody in esports in the professional scene is doing the job of 5 to 6 people. And the reason for that is those professionals don't exist yet, and we have to make them. And what's the purpose of higher education? To do just that. So the scenario of the collegiate scene coming in after the fact, unlike traditional analog sports, is a bit of a challenge, but it's a fun one because we get to reverse engineer and empower a lot of people that went against the grain. And higher education as a whole has gotten a lot of flack over the last decade or forever. In regards to its validity. And part of that argument for validity means evolution and innovation of curriculum to meet the needs of a modern society and industry. And this is that topic where we can reinvigorate so many older paths of education and academic pipelines. And just think, if we're teaching sportscasting, why can't that be shoutcasting? If we're teaching television and broadcast, why can't they be emphasized on Twitch development? Why, if we're teaching creative media production, why isn't that focused on esports curriculum? Advertising and marketing are no-brainers. Sports team management, no-brainer. All these things are no-brainers to me and should be really easy sells when we're getting to that point.
Anyone anyone else want to weigh in real quick, or we can just move on to shout outs and let you guys tell us what the club is up to and any cool events coming up that you want to make sure that people can connect with you with.
So I have just one quick thing. So one thing I never really thought about until a couple days ago, the dynamic of like college competition in general, and specifically like how we do things, it's kind of scary because we have a lot of leadership that are going to be graduating this year. And so the idea of kind of like passing on what we've spent so much time and effort, like really building up onto someone else is really nerve wracking. And so, yeah, it's for me, it's a little scary because, you know, I want someone in my position that is really passionate just about the same things that I am, and you know that they're going to keep the position and like continue with the work that we've already been doing. So there's that aspect of it as well.
I'm excited you mentioned that. That's a common theme that I do ask about. But I mean, you guys have such a strong identity right now that it seems like it'll just foster itself. And knowing that you're reaching out to your wide community of gamers there at OU, like it gives me a lot of safety in thinking about OU going forward. And one thing that I have to reflect on is like, I didn't go through that conversation until I was in my professional career and I was moving up and I was having to make my replacement. You are getting that experience in college with something that you are building from the ground up with what you thought was important, and you're training those people to treasure the same things that you did, but you are also giving them free reign. That is scary and will always be scary, but like you are getting that experience so much earlier. It's going to be such a great experience to do that. And I mean, in a case where college where it's not going to mean the end of a career or the end of burning bridges or anything like that. That was just a learning opportunity. And I'm so glad to see the collegiate esports taking all of this as a learning opportunity to really be able to say what works for us. And it's not just all of collegiate esports. It's what works for us on campus, what works for us as OU and all of that. So, I mean, it's really, I get really emotional about this stuff as I talk to these colleges because it's so cool to see the personality coming in. And the fact that that's even a worry of yours and that you're scared of that, like that just proves that how much this means to people. And it just makes me so much more excited to cover collegiate esports.
Absolutely. I had Matt is the only one in here that represents second generation leadership for us, but everyone else in here, I had a doctrine of trial by fire, and I meant it. And part of it is the same reason that you referenced, is that in the collegiate experience, it is better to crash and burn when you don't have the dependency of children and dependency of extracurriculars post graduation on your shoulders yet. Learn the best lessons you can during your time in the university setting and while you're young. And every single one of them has crashed and burned at some point, or stumbled at least. And that's perfect because it just accelerated them to be that peer that will stand next to me instead of behind me. So.
I love it. Well, I want to say thanks for letting me join you on your stream and let me pick your guys' brains and see what OU is up to. I look forward to hearing more about you all in the future and watching you participate specifically in R6 because I've been covering that a little bit on the side through Collegiate R6. So
and we just announced it today, so we'll be there soon. So
nice.
Cool. A couple plugs for us, SoonerEsports.org to stay in touch with all of our emerging efforts, articles, opinions, events, as well as program overviews for anybody that wants to know more about the developments at the University of Oklahoma. We have now defined all 6 of our programs at the very top level to get an idea of just who we are and to help you understand that it's more than just playing games as the biggest lesson to be taught. Additionally, all of our social media is at OU Esports, so that's Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And stick around and follow us as well as we bring Sooner Nation into the esports realm, which is a big ship to move, but we have a big organization to help steer that ship. So thank you again for helping facilitate this today, Joe. And is there anything else you want to say before we close this out?
Of course. I'm glad to have so many of you here representing OU. That's a great experience for me. If anyone's interested in following the podcast, you can get the the hub link. If you go to anchor.fm/the summoning hour, that'll give you a list of like 10 to 12 different sources that host the podcast. So you can pick the platform that works best for you. Or if you want to follow me on social media, it's pretty much Warlock Rakaul on any and every one of them. I post to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I have Twitch. I use Restream, so I'm also on Mixer and YouTube. And I'll be uploading the VOD to my channel as well, so you can follow me pretty much anywhere.
Great.
Thanks again.
We've had your Twitter handle on, well, your handle on the stream the entire time too. So, want to definitely promote our peers as they come and help us talk about us and what they're doing. Cool. For my Sooners, thanks for joining us tonight and being a part of this conversation, the first of many. And want to give you guys some experience as we start to really paint the picture of who we are at OU. And literally who we are as a Sooner Nation in regards to esports. And as we start to ramp up our fundraising efforts now that we have that OU logo on our chest. So thanks again, everyone. Have a good night. And thanks again, Joe. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.